They say rain washes everything away, but some memories refuse to fade. Tonight, I've gathered 10 disturbing tales from the darkest corners of human experience, stories that have kept people awake long after the storm passed. Story 1. The Rain Watcher. Psychological horror. Rain sounds intensify. Sarah moved into her ground-floor apartment in Seattle during the wettest October on record. She loved the sound of rain. It reminded her of her grandmother's house, where she'd spent childhood summers listening to storms roll across the countryside. This apartment was perfect, affordable, recently renovated, and it had large windows that looked out onto a small courtyard garden. The first week was blissful. Sarah would make tea, curl up on her window seat, and watch the rain create puddles in the courtyard. She worked from home as a graphic designer, so the quiet suited her perfectly. It was on the 8th night that she first noticed him. She was at her usual spot by the window, laptop open, when movement caught her eye. Standing at the far edge of the courtyard, barely visible in the darkness beyond the garden lights, was a figure. A man, she thought, though she couldn't make out any features. He was just standing there, perfectly still, in the pouring rain. Sarah's first thought was that he might be locked out of his apartment. She lived in a building with 16 units, and she didn't know all her neighbors yet. She watched for a moment, expecting him to move, to run for cover, to do something. But he remained motionless, facing her window. The rain was coming down hard now, and whoever it was must have been soaked through. Sarah felt a creeping unease, but told herself she was being paranoid. Maybe he was on a phone call and didn't mind the rain. Maybe he was having some kind of mental health crisis. Either way, it wasn't really her business. She closed her curtains and tried to focus on work. The next night, he was there again, that same spot. Same stillness. This time, Sarah had deliberately left her curtains open, wanting to prove to herself that last night had been a one-off, that it was a different person, or that she'd imagined the unsettling quality of it. But no, there he was. She grabbed her phone and almost called the police. But what would she say? There's someone standing in the courtyard of my apartment building? That wasn't illegal. For all she knew, he lived here. Sarah decided to be proactive. She grabbed an umbrella and a flashlight, steeled herself, and headed outside. The courtyard was empty. She swept her flashlight across every corner, behind every bush, around every tree. Nothing. No one. The rain drummed against her umbrella as she stood in the exact spot where she'd seen the figure. From this angle, she could see directly into her apartment window, now glowing warmly in the night. A chill ran down her spine that had nothing to do with the weather. When she got back inside, dripping and unsettled, she immediately closed all her curtains. That night, she barely slept. Over the following week, Sarah started changing her routine. She worked from her bedroom instead of by the window. She kept the living room curtains closed at all times. She told herself she was being ridiculous, but the thought of that motionless figure standing in the rain, watching her, had burrowed into her mind like a parasite. Then came the note. It was slipped under her door, a piece of paper, slightly damp, with neat handwriting in blue ink. You look so peaceful when you don't know I'm watching. Sarah's hands trembled as she read it again and again. This was real. This was evidence. She called the police immediately. 2 officers came and took her statement. They were professional, but not particularly concerned. The note was creepy, sure, but it didn't constitute a direct threat. They'd increased patrols in the area. They collected the note as evidence. They advised her to install a security camera and to call immediately if she saw anyone suspicious. That night, Sarah couldn't bring herself to look out the window. She ordered a security camera online and had it shipped with next-day delivery. She slept, or tried to, with her bedroom door locked and a chair wedged under the handle. The camera arrived the next afternoon. Sarah installed it herself, positioning it to capture the entire courtyard. She paid for the premium subscription that stored footage on the cloud. At least now she'd have proof. That evening, as darkness fell and the rain began its nightly symphony, Sarah forced herself to check the camera feed on her phone. The courtyard was empty. She watched for an hour, then two. Nothing. Maybe the police patrol had scared him off. Maybe he'd moved on to someone else. The thought should have been comforting, but instead, Sarah felt guilty for being relieved that someone else might now be his target. She fell asleep on the couch, phone still in hand, camera feed still running. She woke to the sound of her phone buzzing. Motion alert. 3:47 a.m. Her heart hammering, Sarah opened the app. The courtyard was dark, rain visible in the camera's night vision. And there, in the exact spot as before, stood the figure. But this time, the camera's angle and night vision revealed what the darkness had previously hidden. The figure was facing her window. Yes, but his face, Sarah's scream caught in her throat. His face was pressed against something. He was standing behind what looked like glass or plastic sheeting, his features distorted, flattened, his mouth open in what might have been a smile or a scream. The rain ran down the surface, creating rivulets across his pressed face. With shaking hands, Sarah called 911. "He's there right now," she whispered urgently. "He's in my courtyard. I have him on camera." The dispatcher kept her on the line. Police were on their way. Sarah watched the feed, watched this nightmare figure standing motionless in the rain behind his strange transparent barrier. Then he moved, not away, but closer, toward her building, toward her window dot, and as he moved, Sarah realized with dawning horror what she was actually seeing. There was no glass barrier. His face wasn't pressed against anything. His face looked like that dot smooth, featureless except for dark holes where eyes should be, and a too wide mouth. Like someone wearing a flesh-colored stocking over their head, but the way he moved, the way his mouth opened wider and wider as he approached, this was his face. Sarah ran to her front door, checked the locks, checked them again. The buzzer for the building entrance suddenly rang. She looked at the video intercom. The screen showed the building's entrance, empty, but the buzzer rang again. And again. And again, then her apartment door buzzer rang. Someone was right outside. She looked through the peephole. The hallway was empty. The buzzing stopped. Her phone lit up with another motion alert. Hands trembling, she checked the camera feed. The figure was gone from the courtyard. But there in the corner of the frame, she could see her own window. And pressed against it from the outside, 3 floors up, was that same flattened, distorted face, mouth impossibly wide. Looking in. Sarah dropped her phone. There was a tapping at her window. Story 2. The Last Passenger. Mystery, urban horror. Rain transitions to steadier rhythm. Marcus had been driving for rideshare for 3 years, mostly weekend nights in downtown Portland. He'd seen it all: drunk couples arguing, passengers getting sick, people crying about breakups, proposals in his back seat. He'd developed a thick skin and a set of rules. No political discussions, no judgment, and always verify the passenger matches the photo before unlocking the doors. It was 2:37 a.m. on a rainy Sunday morning when he got the ping. The pickup location was at the edge of downtown, near the industrial district, not unusual for bar closings. The passenger name was Jay. No profile picture, just the default gray silhouette. Marcus almost declined. No photo accounts were often trouble. But it was a slow night, and the destination was across town. A good fare. He accepted. The pickup spot was a street corner near an old warehouse that had been converted into trendy lofts. As Marcus pulled up, He saw a woman standing under the broken awning of a closed storefront. She was soaked despite her attempts at shelter, her dark hair plastered to her face, wearing what looked like a party dress, completely inappropriate for the weather. She ran to the car and got in the back seat. "Thank you so much," she said, breathless. "I've been trying to get a ride for 40 minutes. My phone's about to die." Marcus glanced at her in the rearview mirror. Mid-20s, makeup running from the rain, shivering. She looked miserable. "Rough night?" he asked, pulling away from the curb. "You have no idea." She hugged herself. "Can you turn up the heat?" Marcus obliged. The address in the app showed a residential area about 30 minutes away. The rain was coming down harder now, and the streets were nearly empty. They drove in silence for a few minutes. Marcus kept glancing in the mirror. Something felt off, though he couldn't pinpoint what. The woman was staring out the window, watching the rain-soaked city pass by. "So, big party?" Marcus asked, trying to fill the uncomfortable silence. "What?" She focused on him in the mirror. "You're dressed up. Must have been some event." She looked down at her dress, as if seeing it for the first time. "Oh, yeah, it was. It was supposed to be special." Her voice cracked on the last word. Marcus recognized the sound. He'd heard it 100 times from heartbroken passengers. "Boy trouble?" She laughed, but it was hollow. "Something like that." They lapsed into silence again. Marcus turned onto the highway that would take them across the river. The rain was so heavy now that his wipers could barely keep up. "Do you believe in second chances?" the woman asked suddenly. Sure. I guess it depends on the situation." They say rain washes everything away, but some memories refuse to fade. Tonight, I've gathered 10 disturbing tales from the darkest corners of human experience, stories that have kept people awake long after the storm passed. Story 1. The Rain Watcher. Psychological horror. Rain sounds intensify. Sarah moved into her ground-floor apartment in Seattle during the wettest October on record. She loved the sound of rain. It reminded her of her grandmother's house, where she'd spent childhood summers listening to storms roll across the countryside. This apartment was perfect, affordable, recently renovated, and it had large windows that looked out onto a small courtyard garden. The first week was blissful. Sarah would make tea, curl up on her window seat, and watch the rain create puddles in the courtyard. She worked from home as a graphic designer, so the quiet suited her perfectly. It was on the 8th night that she first noticed him. She was at her usual spot by the window, laptop open, when movement caught her eye. Standing at the far edge of the courtyard, barely visible in the darkness beyond the garden lights, was a figure. A man, she thought, though she couldn't make out any features. He was just standing there, perfectly still, in the pouring rain. Sarah's first thought was that he might be locked out of his apartment. She lived in a building with 16 units, and she didn't know all her neighbors yet. She watched for a moment, expecting him to move, to run for cover, to do something. But he remained motionless, facing her window. The rain was coming down hard now, and whoever it was must have been soaked through. Sarah felt a creeping unease, but told herself she was being paranoid. Maybe he was on a phone call and didn't mind the rain. Maybe he was having some kind of mental health crisis. Either way, it wasn't really her business. She closed her curtains and tried to focus on work. The next night, he was there again, that same spot. Same stillness. This time, Sarah had deliberately left her curtains open, wanting to prove to herself that last night had been a one-off, that it was a different person, or that she'd imagined the unsettling quality of it. But no, there he was. She grabbed her phone and almost called the police. But what would she say? "There's someone standing in the courtyard of my apartment building?" It wasn't illegal. For all she knew, he lived here. Sarah decided to be proactive. She grabbed an umbrella and a flashlight, steeled herself, and headed outside. The courtyard was empty. She swept her flashlight across every corner, behind every bush, around every tree. Nothing. No one. The rain drummed against her umbrella as she stood in the exact spot where she'd seen the figure. From this angle, she could see directly into her apartment window, now glowing warmly in the night. A chill ran down her spine that had nothing to do with the weather. When she got back inside, dripping and unsettled, she immediately closed all her curtains. That night, she barely slept. Over the following week, Sarah started changing her routine. She worked from her bedroom instead of by the window. She kept the living room curtains closed at all times. She told herself she was being ridiculous, but the thought of that motionless figure standing in the rain, watching her, had burrowed into her mind like a parasite dot. Then came the note dot. It was slipped under her door, a piece of paper, slightly damp, with neat handwriting in blue ink. "You look so peaceful when you don't know I'm watching." Sarah's hands trembled as she read it again and again. This was real. This was evidence. She called the police immediately. 2 officers came and took her statement. They were professional, but not particularly concerned. The note was creepy, sure, but it didn't constitute a direct threat. They'd increased patrols in the area. They collected the note as evidence. They advised her to install a security camera and to call immediately if she saw anyone suspicious. That night, Sarah couldn't bring herself to look out the window. She ordered a security camera online and had it shipped with next-day delivery. She slept, or tried to, with her bedroom, door locked and a chair wedged under the handle. The camera arrived the next afternoon. Sarah installed it herself, positioning it to capture the entire courtyard. She paid for the premium subscription that stored footage on the cloud. At least now she'd have proof. That evening, as darkness fell and the rain began its nightly symphony, Sarah forced herself to check the camera feed on her phone. The courtyard was empty. She watched for an hour, then 2. Nothing. Maybe the police patrol had scared him off. Maybe he'd moved on to someone else. The thought should have been comforting, but instead, Sarah felt guilty for being relieved that someone else might now be his target. She fell asleep on the couch, phone still in hand, camera feed still running. She woke to the sound of her phone buzzing. Motion alert. 3:47 a.m. Her heart hammering, Sarah opened the app. The courtyard was dark, rain visible in the camera's night vision. And there, in the exact spot as before, stood the figure. But this time, the camera's angle and night vision revealed what the darkness had previously hidden. The figure was facing her window. Yes, but his face, Sarah's scream caught in her throat. His face was pressed against something. He was standing behind what looked like glass or plastic sheeting, his features distorted, flattened, his mouth open in what might have been a smile or a scream. The rain ran down the surface, creating rivulets across his pressed face. With shaking hands, Sarah called 911. "He's there right now," she whispered urgently. "He's in my courtyard. I have him on camera." The dispatcher kept her on the line. Police were on their way. Sarah watched the feed, watched this nightmare figure standing motionless in the rain behind his strange transparent barrier. Then he moved, not away, but closer, toward her building, toward her window dot, and as he moved, Sarah realized with dawning horror what she was actually seeing. There was no glass barrier. His face wasn't pressed against anything. His face looked like that dot smooth, featureless except for dark holes where eyes should be, and a too wide mouth. Like someone wearing a flesh-colored stocking over their head, but the way he moved, the way his mouth opened wider and wider as he approached, this was his face. Sarah ran to her front door, checked the locks, checked them again. The buzzer for the building entrance suddenly rang. She looked at the video intercom. The screen showed the building's entrance, empty, but the buzzer rang again. And again. And again, then her apartment door buzzer rang. Someone was right outside. She looked through the peephole. The hallway was empty. The buzzing stopped. Her phone lit up with another motion alert. Hands trembling, she checked the camera feed. The figure was gone from the courtyard. But there in the corner of the frame, she could see her own window. And pressed against it from the outside, 3 floors up, was that same flattened, distorted face, mouth impossibly wide. Looking in. Sarah dropped her phone. There was a tapping at her window. Story 2. The Last Passenger. Mystery, urban horror. Rain transitions to steadier rhythm. Marcus had been driving for rideshare for 3 years, mostly weekend nights in downtown Portland. He'd seen it all: drunk couples arguing, passengers getting sick, people crying about breakups, proposals in his back seat. He'd developed a thick skin and a set of rules. No political discussions, no judgment, and always verify the passenger matches the photo before unlocking the doors. It was 2:37 a.m. on a rainy Sunday morning when he got the ping. The pickup location was at the edge of downtown, near the industrial district, not unusual for bar closings. The passenger name was Jay. No profile picture, just the default gray silhouette. Marcus almost declined. No photo accounts were often trouble. But it was a slow night, and the destination was across town. A good fare. He accepted. The pickup spot was a street corner near an old warehouse that had been converted into trendy lofts. As Marcus pulled up, he saw a woman standing under the broken awning of a closed storefront. She was soaked despite her attempts at shelter, her dark hair plastered to her face. Wearing what looked like a party dress, completely inappropriate for the weather. She ran to the car and got in the back seat. "Thank you so much," she said, breathless. "I've been trying to get a ride for 40 minutes. My phone's about to die." Marcus glanced at her in the rearview mirror. Mid-20s, makeup running from the rain, shivering. She looked miserable. "Rough night?" he asked, pulling away from the curb. "You have no idea." She hugged herself. "Can you turn up the heat?" Marcus obliged. The address in the app showed a residential area about 30 minutes away. The rain was coming down harder now, and the streets were nearly empty. They drove in silence for a few minutes. Marcus kept glancing in the mirror. Something felt off, though he couldn't pinpoint what. The woman was staring out the window, watching the rain-soaked city pass by. "So, big party?" Marcus asked, trying to fill the uncomfortable silence. "What?" She focused on him in the mirror. "You're dressed up. Must have been some event." She looked down at her dress, as if seeing it for the first time. "Oh, yeah, it was. It was supposed to be special." Her voice cracked on the last word. Marcus recognized the sound. He'd heard it 100 times from heartbroken passengers. "Boy trouble?" She laughed, but it was hollow. "Something like that." They lapsed into silence again. Marcus turned onto the highway that would take them across the river. The rain was so heavy now that his wipers could barely keep up. "Do you believe in second chances?" the woman asked suddenly. Sure. I guess it depends on the situation." The camera moves through the doorway, back into the real world. The dining room looks like it's been abandoned for years. Dust covers everything. The calendar on the wall shows May 1992. "And now it's your turn," the voices say. "You watched the tapes. You wanted to understand. You wanted to know what happened. That curiosity, that need to know, I can taste it. It's coming through now." The camera spins wildly, and I catch a glimpse of that thing from the shadows. It's in the real dining room now, and it's moving toward the camera. The tape cuts to static, but here's the thing that made me create this video. The thing that made me realize I'm in danger. When I turned off the TV after watching that last tape, I saw it. In the reflection of the black screen. Standing behind me. The same impossibly tall, impossibly thin figure from the tape. When I spun around, my living room was empty. But I know what I saw. That was 3 days ago. Since then, things have been happening. I hear voices from empty rooms. I see movements in my peripheral vision. Yesterday, I found a VHS tape on my doorstep. It's labeled with tomorrow's date. I haven't watched it yet. I don't think I will. Instead, I'm leaving. I'm going to drive as far as I can, and I'm going to mail this USB drive to someone, anyone who might be able to warn people. Don't look for the tapes. If you find a storage unit full of VHS cassettes with dates on them, leave them alone. Don't be curious. Don't try to understand, because it's not showing you the past. It's showing you bait. And once you take it, once you watch, it knows where you are. It knows what you want. And it will use that to video ends abruptly. End transcript. The podcast hosts who received this USB drive tried to trace it. The return address was for a UPS store in a small town in New Mexico. Security footage from the store showed a man matching David Rosen's description mailing the package. That was 4 months ago. David Rosen has not been seen since. His car was found abandoned on a rural highway outside of Roswell. The vehicle showed no signs of a struggle. His phone and wallet were still inside. But David was gone. The USB drive also contained image files. Screenshots from the tapes. The podcast hosts won't release them, but they confirmed one detail. In every single screenshot, in the background, barely visible, is a tall, thin figure. And in each subsequent image, it's closer to the camera. The final screenshot, according to the hosts, shows the figure standing directly behind David's reflection in a mirror. The date stamp shows it was taken the day before he disappeared. If you ever come across a collection of VHS tapes labeled with dates, don't watch them. Don't try to understand the story. Because some stories aren't meant to be known. They're meant to be traps, and something very patient is waiting on the other side. Hungry for anyone curious enough to take the bait. Story 4. The Smiling Neighbors, Suburban Horror. Rain becomes suburban ambience with distant thunder. Jennifer and Tom bought their first house in a quiet suburb outside Denver in the summer of 2019. It was everything they dreamed of. 3 bedrooms. A nice yard. Great schools nearby for when they were ready to have kids. The neighborhood was perfect tree-lined streets, well-maintained homes, and friendly neighbors who actually waved when you drove by. The Hendersons lived next door. Margaret and Bill, both retired, probably in their late 60s. They came over within an hour of Jennifer and Tom moving in, bearing a homemade apple pie and warm smiles. Welcome to the neighborhood. Margaret beamed. We're so happy to have young people moving in. The Johnsons who lived here before kept to themselves far too much. Well, we're very friendly, Jennifer assured her, charmed by the older woman's warmth. Oh, we can tell. You both have such wonderful smiles, Bill added. We love smiles here. Makes everything so much brighter, don't you think? It was an odd thing to say, but Jennifer and Tom laughed it off. The Hendersons were sweet, if a bit eccentric. The first week was busy with unpacking and settling in. Jennifer noticed that the Hendersons seemed to be outside a lot gardening, washing their car, sitting on their porch. And every single time she saw them, they were smiling. Not just casual friendly smiles, but full, beaming grins that seemed slightly out of place for mundane activities, like pulling weeds or checking the mail. They're just really happy people, Tom said when Jennifer mentioned it. I wish we could be that content in retirement. But Jennifer couldn't shake a vague unease. There was something mechanical about those smiles, something that didn't quite reach their eyes. One evening, about 2 weeks after moving in, Jennifer was in the kitchen making dinner when she glanced out the window. The Hendersons were in their backyard, and they weren't alone. 3 other couples from the street were there too, all standing in a circle on the Hendersons' patio, and they were all smiling. Just standing there, in complete silence, smiling at each other. Jennifer watched for a full minute. No one spoke. No one moved except for the slight swaying you'd expect from people standing in one place. But those smiles never wavered. "Tom, come look at this," she called. By the time Tom got to the window, the gathering had broken up. The neighbors were saying goodbye in what looked like a perfectly normal way. Look at what? They were all just standing there, smiling. Tom peered out. Maybe it was a moment of silence for something? Or some kind of meditation? Jennifer felt foolish. Yeah, maybe. But the strange gatherings continued. Jennifer started noticing them every few days, different configurations of neighbors, always in someone's backyard, always standing in silence with those unwavering smiles. It usually lasted 5 to 10 minutes, then everyone would disperse as if nothing unusual had happened. She tried to bring it up, casually with Margaret one day when they both happened to be getting their mail. "I noticed you had some folks over the other night," Jennifer said. "Everything okay?" Margaret's smile somehow grew wider. "Oh, yes, we have our little circle. It's very important that we stay connected. You and Tom should join us sometime." "Circle? Like a book club or something like that. It's wonderful. Really brings the community together. And it's so much easier when everyone is smiling." The way she emphasized smiling made Jennifer's skin prickle. "I'll mention it to Tom," Jennifer said, backing away. That night, she tried to explain her concerns to Tom, but she sounded paranoid even to herself. What was she saying? That their neighbors were too happy? That they smiled too much? "Babe, I think you're spending too much time alone in the house," Tom said gently. "Why don't you sign up for some activities? Maybe make some friends?" Jennifer knew he was right, that she was probably just overthinking things. But the feeling of wrongness wouldn't go away. It was another week before things escalated. Jennifer woke up at 3 a.m. to use the bathroom. As she passed the bedroom window, something made her glance outside. The street was dark, except for the pools of light from the street lamps. Under the street lamp, directly in front of their house, stood Margaret Henderson. She was in her nightgown, bare feet on the pavement, staring directly up at Jennifer's window. Smiling. Jennifer jerked back from the window, heart pounding. She must have been mistaken. Must have been. She forced herself to look again. Margaret was gone. The street was empty. Jennifer barely slept the rest of the night. The next morning, she saw Margaret in her garden, acting perfectly normal. When she noticed Jennifer, she waved cheerfully. Jennifer waved back, feeling insane. Had she dreamed it? Been half asleep and confused? That afternoon, a flyer showed up in their mailbox. It was an invitation to a neighborhood harmony meeting at the Hendersons' house at Friday evening. The flyer was decorated with clip art smiley faces. "Should we go?" Tom asked. Might be good to meet more people. Jennifer wanted to say no, wanted to tell him about Margaret standing in the street at 3 a.m., but she knew how it would sound. Instead, she agreed. Friday came. Jennifer and Tom walked next door at 7 p.m., carrying a bottle of wine. Margaret answered, wearing that ever-present smile. "Come in. Everyone's so excited to meet you properly." The house was packed. Jennifer recognized most of the faces from the neighborhood, at least 15 people crammed into the Hendersons' living room. And every single person was smiling. "Everyone, these are the Thompsons," Bill announced. "Jennifer and Tom, our newest members of the community." A chorus of hellos, all delivered with those two wide smiles. Margaret ushered them to sit on the couch. Someone handed them drinks, lemonade in plastic cups with smiley faces drawn on them in marker. "So," Bill began, standing at the front of the room, "I think it's time we explain to our new neighbors what makes our community so special. Jennifer Tom, we pride ourselves on being the happiest neighborhood in the entire state. We have zero crime, zero conflict, and zero unhappiness." "That's impressive," Tom said. "It is. And we maintain it through a very simple principle: constant, unwavering positivity. When everyone is happy, when everyone is smiling, negativity has no foothold. Problems can't take root." Jennifer noticed that no one was blinking. Every single person in the room was staring at them with those fixed smiles, and no one was blinking. "Now," Bill continued, "we understand that newcomers might find our ways a bit unusual at first. But we find that once people try it, once they commit to the smile, everything becomes so much easier." "Commit to the smile?" Jennifer asked weakly. "Exactly." Margaret chimed in. "It's not just about looking happy. It's about being happy. And we've found tha." Story 6. The Inheritance. Gothic psychological horror. Rain becomes heavier, more ominous. When my Aunt Delilah died, I inherited her house. This came as a surprise. I'd barely known the woman. She was my father's older sister, estranged from the family for reasons no one would explain. I'd met her maybe 3 times in my entire life, most recently at my father's funeral 5 years prior. She'd been polite but distant, and after the reception, she'd simply vanished back to wherever she lived. I didn't even know she'd been sick. The lawyer's letter arrived out of nowhere. Delilah Moreau had passed away from cancer, and her will specified that her estate, including her home and all its contents, was to go to me, her only niece. Why me? I asked my mother over the phone. "I don't know, Catherine." "Your aunt was complicated. Maybe she saw something of herself in you." My mother's voice was tight, uncomfortable. "If I were you, I'd sell the place immediately. Don't even go there." Which, of course, guaranteed I would go. I've always been too curious for my own good. The house was in rural Maine, 3 hours from where I lived in Boston. I'd taken a week off work, planning to inventory the contents, arrange for an estate sale, and list the property. Simple, straightforward. The house was not what I expected. From the lawyer's description, I'd pictured a small cottage. Instead, I found myself pulling up to a 3-story Victorian mansion, complete with a tower room and wraparound porch. The property was massive, at least 5 acres of overgrown gardens and forest. It was beautiful and unsettling in equal measure. The lawyer had sent me the keys. The front door opened with a long creak that sounded like it belonged in a horror movie. The interior was dark, all the curtains drawn, and smelled of old books and something floral I couldn't quite identify. I found the light switch. The chandelier in the foyer sputtered to life, revealing a grand staircase and rooms branching off in multiple directions. "Aunt Delilah, what were you doing in a place like this?" I whispered to the empty air. I spent the first hour just exploring. The house was immaculate, despite Delilah having been sick. No dust, no disorder, as if someone had been maintaining it. The furniture was antique, probably valuable. The walls were covered in paintings, portraits mostly, of people I didn't recognize. But it was the tower room that called to me. I could see the entrance from the second-floor hallway, a narrow staircase spiraling upward. The door at the top was locked. Of course, it was locked. The one room I most wanted to see. I tried each key on the ring the lawyer had provided. None of them fit. There had to be another key somewhere. As I searched the house, I began to notice odd details. Every clock had stopped at the same time, 3:47. Every single one. There were dozens of clocks, grandfather clocks, wall clocks, mantel clocks, and all showed 3:47 in the library. I found journals. Dozens of them, leather-bound, filled with my aunt's elegant handwriting. I opened one at random, dated from 30 years ago. The house spoke to me again last night. It's getting stronger. It knows I'm weakening. I've tried to leave, but where would I go? This house has been in our family for generations. It's part of us now, part of me. And soon, it will need someone new. I sat down hard in the library chair. What did that mean? Was my aunt mentally ill? That would explain the estrangement from the family. I kept reading. Entry after entry, years of them, all describing the house as if it were alive. Delilah wrote about rooms that changed when she wasn't looking, doors that appeared where there had been walls, whispers in the darkness, and something she called the watching. It watches from the tower room. I've never been able to go up there. Mother forbade it. She said the tower is where the house thinks, where it dreams. Never disturb a house's dreams, Delilah, she told me. But I hear singing sometimes, coming from up there. A woman's voice, beautiful and terrible. I closed the journal. This was too much. My aunt had clearly been unwell, probably suffering from some form of psychosis. The responsible thing would be to call a real estate agent in the morning and live, but it was already getting dark, and the nearest hotel was an hour away. I'd stay the night, leave first thing in the morning. I found the master bedroom, Delilah's room, and tried not to think about the journal entries as I lay down on her bed. The house settled around me with creaks and groans. Old houses made noise. That was normal dot at 3:47 a.m. I woke up to singing, a woman's voice, clear and beautiful, coming from above me. From the tower room, I lay frozen in bed, listening. The song was in a language I didn't recognize, but it was mournful longing. It made me want to cry without understanding why. Then it stopped, and in the silence that followed, I heard footsteps directly above me. Slow, measured, walking in circles. I grabbed my phone and turned on the flashlight. I was not staying in that bed. I'd sleep in my car if I had to, but when I opened the bedroom door, the hallway had changed dot. It was longer. The wallpaper was different, older, peeling. And at the far end, where there had been a wall, was now a door. A door I hadn't seen before. I should have run. Every instinct screamed at me to get out of the house. But my feet carried me forward, toward that impossible door. It was unlocked. Behind it, a staircase spiraled upward. The tower stairs. But these stairs were different from the ones I'd seen earlier. These were stone, ancient, worn smooth by countless feet. The singing started again, calling me upward. I climbed. I don't know why. I couldn't seem to stop myself. The tower room was not what I expected. It was vast, far larger than the exterior of the tower should have allowed. The walls were lined with mirrors, dozens of them, reflecting and re-reflecting until it seemed like the room went on forever. And in the center, in a chair that looked like a throne, sat a woman in a white dress. She was beautiful in an otherworldly way, ageless, with long black hair that seemed to move of its own accord. She stopped singing when she saw me. Her smile was radiant and terrifying. Finally, she said, "I've been waiting so long. Delilah promised me a replacement before she died. She kept her word." "I don't understand," I managed to say. "This house needs a keeper, someone to anchor it, to give it form. Without a keeper, it would drift away, become unmoored from reality. The lily served for 60 years. Before her, your great-aunt. Before her, your great-great-grandmother. Always a woman from your family. Always a willing sacrifice." "I'm not willing," I said. Her smile didn't waver. "Look in the mirrors, Catherine." I turned. In the reflections, I saw myself. But in each mirror, I was different, older. In some, I was elderly, white-haired. In others, I was middle-aged. And in each reflection, I was sitting in that chair, wearing that white dress. These are your futures. All of them. Every possible path your life might take. And in every single one, you end up here. This is your inheritance. Not the house, the duty. The curse, if you prefer. You can run, yes. You can try to live your life elsewhere. But the house will call you back. They always come back. What are you? I whispered. I'm what this house was built to contain. I'm what your ancestor trapped here 200 years ago. She thought she could control me, use me to keep her family prosperous and safe. And I have kept my bargain. Your family has thrived. But the price is one of you must stay here, must keep me company, must sing to me and feed me with their years. I ran. I fled down those impossible stairs, through the changing hallways, out the front door, into my car. I drove away without looking back, hands shaking on the wheel. I sold the house. I never went back, but she was right, Dot. It's been 6 months now. The house sold to a young family, which should have made me happy. But every night, I hear singing. Her voice, calling me. And sometimes I wake up in places. I don't remember going to standing in parking lots, sitting in parks, always facing the same direction. North, toward Maine, toward the house. I'm driving there now. I've tried to stop, tried to turn around, but my hands keep steering me north. I'll arrive around 3:47 a.m., I think. That seems fitting. My mother called yesterday. She was crying. She said she should have told me the truth, should have warned me. She said Delilah had tried to break the curse, had refused to name a successor. That's why she got sick. That's why she died. The house always gets what it needs, my mother sobbed. I'm so sorry, Catherine. I'm so sorry. The singing is louder now. I can hear it even over the sound of my car engine, over the radio, over my own screaming. It's beautiful. It promises rest. It promises purpose. In the mirrors, my rearview mirror, the side mirrors, I can see her sitting in my backseat, smiling, singing. Almost home now. Almost time to take my place in the tower room, in that chair, in those mirrors full of futures that all end the same way. If you ever receive an unexpected inheritance, especially from a relative you barely knew, maybe think twice before claiming it. Some legacies are meant to stay buried. Some houses don't want owners. They want prisoners. Story 7. The Drowning Game, Dark Folklore. Rain becomes liquid, almost underwater sounding. In the summer of 2003, 6 teenagers went camping at Lake Clearwater, a remote spot in the Cascade Mountains. Only 3 of them came back. This is the story they told police, and the reason the lake has been closed to the public ever since. The group consisted of 3 couples, all 17 years old, celebrating their graduation from high school. They'd planned the trip for months, 3 days of camping, swimming, and freedom before they all headed off to different colleges. The first day was perfect. Sunshine, clear water, no other people around. They set up their tents, started a fire, swam in the lake. Everything you'd expect from a summer camping trip. It was Emily who found the stones. She was swimming alone, away from the group, enjoying the quiet. She dove down and saw something on the lake bed that caught her eye, a perfect circle of white stones, about 6 feet in diameter. Perfectly arranged, clearly not natural. She surfaced and called to the others. Guys, there's something weird down there. All 6 of them dove down to look. The circle was about 15 feet below the surface, in a clear patch between the weeds. The stones were smooth, almost luminescent in the filtered sunlight. Some kind of memorial, maybe, suggested Travis, Emily's boyfriend, or art project, added Zoe. They surfaced, but Emily couldn't stop thinking about those stones. There was something compelling about them, something that made her want to dive down and touch them. That evening, as they sat around the campfire, Josh told them about a local legend he'd read about. The Lake Clearwater drowning game. It's supposed to be this old folktale from the native tribes that lived here, he explained. The lake was sacred to them, but also dangerous. They said there was a spirit in the water that would challenge visitors to a game. If you accepted and won, you'd receive great fortune. If you lost, you drowned. How do you play? Emily asked, genuinely curious. According to the legend, you had to find the circle of stones at the bottom of the lake. Then, at midnight, you'd swim down and sit in the center of the circle. The spirit would come, and the game would begin. What kind of game? Zoe asked. That's the thing nobody knows, because everyone who played either drowned or was too scared to complete it. The legend says you have to hold your breath for as long as the spirit tells you to. If you surface before it says you can, you lose. They all laughed it off as a creepy campfire story. But Emily couldn't shake the feeling that Josh had just described exactly what she'd found. That night, Emily couldn't sleep. The moon was full, casting silver light across the water. She kept thinking about the circle of stones, about the game. It was just a legend, obviously. But what if it wasn't? She didn't consciously decide to try it. She just found herself leaving her tent, walking to the water's edge, wading in. The water was shockingly cold at night. Emily was a strong swimmer. She'd been on the swim team all 4 years of high school. She could hold her breath for over 2 minutes. If the game was real, she could beat it. She dove down, following the moonlight filtering through the water. There the circle of stones, glowing faintly in the darkness. Emily swam into the circle and sat cross-legged at its center, looking up at the surface far above. This was stupid. Nothing was going to happen. Then the water around her began to move. It started as a gentle current, then grew stronger, circling around her like a whirlpool. The stones began to glow brighter, and in the water before her, something took shape. It wasn't quite human. It was made of water itself, a feminine shape that flowed and reformed constantly. Where its face should be, there were 2 points of light like eyes. Emily tried to scream, but of course, no sound came out underwater. She tried to swim up, but the current held her in place. The water spirit reached out and touched Emily's forehead with a finger of liquid. Suddenly, Emily could hear a voice in her mind. You have entered the circle at the time of challenge. The game begins. Hold your breath until I release you. If you surface before, you become part of the lake forever. If you endure, you win your heart's desire. Emily's lungs were already starting to burn. She'd been down for almost a minute already. The spirit circled her, studying her. Time seemed to stretch. Emily's chest ached. She wanted to shoot to the surface, but terror kept her frozen. The spirit had said she'd become part of the lake. She believed it. 2 minutes. Her lungs were screaming. Her vision was starting to tunnel. The spirit leaned close, its face near hers. Would you like to quit? Surface now, and it will be over. Emily shook her head. She'd been holding her breath for over 2 minutes, her personal best. But she was running out of oxygen fast. The spirit smiled. Emily could somehow tell, even though it had no real face. Interesting. Let's make it harder. The spirit touched Emily's chest, and suddenly she couldn't hold her breath anymore. Water rushed into her lungs. Emily panicked, thrashing, trying to reach the surface, but the current still held her. She was drowning. She was actually drowning. The spirit's voice came again. Did you think the game would be fair? Breathe the water. Become part of the lake. It's easier than fighting. Emily's vision went dark. Her last thought was that she should have stayed in her tent. Travis woke to the sound of screaming. He bolted out of his tent to find Zoe at the water's edge, pointing at the lake. "Emily! Emily's out there." Travis could see her, a pale shape floating face down about 30 feet from shore. He dove in without thinking, swimming harder than he ever had in his life. When he reached Emily, she wasn't breathing. He hauled her back to shore where Josh was already performing CPR. Water poured from Emily's mouth. She coughed, gasped, and began breathing again. What happened? Travis demanded once she could speak. Emily was shaking violently, her lips blue. "The game," she whispered. "I tried to play the game." She told them everything. About the spirit, the challenge, how she drowned, and then suddenly found herself on the surface. "It let me go. I don't know why. It said I was the first in a long time who didn't give up. That I'd earned a second chance. They should have left immediately. They should have packed up and driven away." But the sun was coming up, and in the daylight, the whole thing seemed like a near-drowning accident mixed with a nightmare. They decided to wait until Emily felt strong enough to travel. That was their mistake. That afternoon, Zoe announced she wanted to try. "Are you insane?" Travis said, "You saw what happened to Emily. Emily survived. She said the spirit gave her a second chance. What if the legend is true? What if we can win something?" "It's not worth it," Emily said weakly. "Don't go down there." But Zoe was stubborn. "I'm an even better swimmer than you. I can do this." That night, despite everyone's protests, Zoe entered the lake. The others watched from shore. Terrified, Zoe dove down. They saw her reach the circle, saw the water begin to glow. Then nothing. 1 minute. 2 minutes. 3. "She should be up by now," Josh said, fear creeping into his voice. 4 minutes. 5. Travis dove in, swimming down to the circle. Zoe was sitting at its center, eyes open, not moving. The water around her was bright, with that eerie glow. Travis tried to grab her, tried to pull her up, but it was like she was made of stone, immovable. He had to surface or drown himself. They called for help. It took hours for rescue services to reach the remote location. Divers went down. Zoe's body was gone. The circle of stones remained, but there was no sign of her. The divers searched the entire lake. Nothing. Emily told them what she'd experienced. One diver, an older man, listened carefully. "We've had 7 drownings at this lake over the past 40 years, he said. Only one body was ever recovered. The others just vanished. Lake Clearwater has underground caves, currents we don't fully understand. But some of the locals believe it's more than that." That night, as the surviving teens packed to leave at first light, Josh made a confession. "I have to try," he said. "Zoe was my girlfriend. If there's any chance she's still down there, if the spirit has her, I have to try to get her back." "Josh, no," Emily pleaded. "You'll die too. Maybe, or maybe I can bargain with it. Offer myself in exchange." Before anyone could stop him, Josh ran to the water and dove in. This time, they all watched from the shore. Josh swam down to the circle. The glow began. And then the entire lake lit up. A pillar of light shot up from the circle, breaking the surface, illuminating the night like day. They could see shapes moving in the light, human forms, dozens of them, all trapped in the water. Then Josh surfaced. But he wasn't alone. Next to him, supporting him, was Zoe, and she was glowing, translucent, clearly no longer alive, but still moving, still conscious. They helped Josh to shore. Zoe stopped at the water's edge. She couldn't or wouldn't come onto land. "I lost," she said simply. Her voice sounded like water flowing over rocks. "I'm part of the lake now. But Josh offered himself in exchange for me." The spirit was amused. It said Josh was the first in centuries to offer a trade instead of seeking a prize. Come out of the water, Emily begged. Come with us. Zoe shook her head. I can't. This is my home now. But I can warn you, tell people to stay away from this lake. Tell them about the game. The spirit is bored of people who seek fortune. It's been playing this game for centuries, and it always wins. Don't let anyone else play. She turned to Josh. Thank you for trying. I love you. Then she sank beneath the surface and was gone. The 3 survivors. Story 8. The Replacement. Body horror, paranoia. Rain shifts to a heartbeat rhythm beneath the drops. My wife started acting strange 6 weeks ago. Small things at first, forgetting little details about our life together. Slight changes in her mannerisms. A new way of tilting her head when she was thinking. I attributed it to stress. She'd been working long hours on a project at her lab. Molecular biology research. Something to do with cellular regeneration. I didn't understand most of it. Then she stopped drinking coffee. That might not sound like much, but my wife, my real wife, Sarah, was a coffee addict. She drank at least 4 cups a day for the entire 12 years I'd known her. Black, no sugar. It was one of her defining characteristics. Our kitchen had a professional-grade espresso machine that cost more than our couch. One morning, I poured her a cup, same as always. She looked at it with what I can only describe as confusion. What's this? She asked. Coffee. Your morning coffee. Oh. She picked it up, smelled it, and set it down. I don't think I want any today. Are you feeling okay? I feel fine. Great, actually. Just not in the mood for coffee. She didn't drink coffee the next day either. Or the day after that. By the end of the week, I was concerned enough to ask directly. Sarah, did something happen? Did a doctor tell you to cut caffeine or something? She looked at me blankly. Why would I do that? Because you've been drinking coffee every day since I met you. She laughed, but it sounded wrong. Don't be silly. I've never been much of a coffee drinker. I felt like I'd been slapped. Sarah, what are you talking about? We literally chose this apartment because it was near your favorite coffee shop. I think you're misremembering. Honey, she kissed my cheek and left for work. I stood in our kitchen, staring at the expensive espresso machine that Sarah had insisted on, that she'd used every single day for 5 years. What was happening? I told myself I was being paranoid. People change their habits. Maybe she'd read something about caffeine being bad for you. Maybe she was trying to be healthier. But then there were other things. She stopped watching the crime. Documentaries she'd been obsessed with. She suddenly hated tomatoes, which she'd eaten regularly before. She didn't recognize the name of her childhood dog when I mentioned him. She started sleeping on the wrong side of the bed, and her handwriting changed. I noticed it when I saw a grocery list she'd written. The letters were similar, but subtly different. The way she formed her R's, the slant of her cursive. When I pointed it out, she laughed it off. Handwriting changes. It's not set in stone. I started documenting everything, taking notes on my phone. Things Sarah did or said that didn't match the woman I'd married. The list grew longer every day. I know how this sounds. I know what you're thinking, that I was losing my mind, inventing problems, seeing patterns that didn't exist. That's what I tried to tell myself. But the proof kept mounting. One night, I tested her. We were sitting on the couch, watching TV, and I said, "Remember our trip to Costa Rica for our anniversary?" She smiled. Of course. That was wonderful. We've never been to Costa Rica. Our anniversary trip was to Montreal. What was your favorite part? I pressed. Oh, probably the ziplining through the rainforest. And those beautiful beaches. My hands went cold. Sarah, we went to Montreal. We've never been to Costa Rica. She looked confused for a moment, then shook her head. Right, Montreal. I don't know why I said Costa Rica. I must be thinking of something I saw on TV. But she'd given specific details. The zip lining, the beaches, like she was describing a real memory, just not one that belonged to my wife. That night, after she fell asleep, I went through her phone. I felt terrible doing it, spying on my own wife, but I needed to understand what was happening. Her messages were normal. Work stuff, conversations with friends, nothing suspicious. But I noticed that all the messages from before 6 weeks ago were gone. Her entire chat history had been wiped, starting from exactly the day she started acting strange. I checked her emails. Same thing. Everything before 6 weeks ago had been deleted. Her photos were still there, though. Pictures of us together, of her with friends, family gatherings. But when I looked closely, I realized something that made my stomach drop. Sarah wasn't in any of them. Or rather, there was a woman who looked like Sarah. But when I zoomed in on the faces, the features were slightly off. The nose was a bit different. The eyes weren't quite the right shade of green. It was like someone had tried to Photoshop Sarah's face onto someone else's body, but hadn't quite gotten it perfect. I stayed up all night going through old photos on my own computer. Pictures I'd taken that hadn't been on her phone. And there she was, my real Sarah. Different from the woman sleeping in our bed. Subtle differences, but they were there. The real Sarah had a small scar on her chin from a childhood accident. The woman in our bed didn't. I felt like I was losing my mind. What was I suggesting? That someone had replaced my wife? That was insane. Impossible. But the evidence was right in front of me. The next morning, I confronted her. I showed her the photos, pointed out the missing scar, asked her about the deleted messages and emails. She looked concerned, but not defensive. Sweetheart, I think you need to see someone. This paranoia isn't healthy. Answer the questions. Where's the scar from when you fell off your bike at age 7? I never fell off my bike. You're inventing memories. What's your mother's maiden name? She answered correctly. She knew all the facts, all the biographical details. But she'd gotten the emotional truths wrong. The coffee, the dog, the small daily habits that made Sarah who she was. I think you're having some kind of breakdown, she said gently. Let me call Dr. Morrison for you. Dr. Morrison was our family doctor. The real Sarah had loved him. He'd been treating her since childhood. But when she made the call, she had to look up his number. My Sarah would have known it by heart. I left the apartment. I needed to think, needed to figure out what to do. Who could I tell? Who would believe me? I went to Sarah's lab. I had to know what she was working on, if it could somehow explain this. I'd been to the lab before, years ago when Sarah first started working there. But when I arrived, security stopped me. I'm sorry, sir. This is a restricted facility. You need clearance to enter. I'm just here to see my wife, Sarah Brennan. I've been here before. The guard checked his computer. I'm sorry, we don't have any employee by that name. That's impossible. She's been working here for 3 years. Sir, I'm going to have to ask you to leave. I pulled out my phone and showed him a photo. This is her. She works in the molecular biology department. The guard studied the photo. His expression changed surprise, then something that looked like fear. Please wait here. He made a phone call, speaking too quietly for me to hear. 5 minutes later, 2 men in suits appeared. Government. I'd bet my life on it. CIA, NSA, something, Mr. Brennan? Come with us, please. They took me to an office inside the facility. One of them sat across from me. Hands folded. Double quotes, Mr. Brennan. I need you to tell me exactly what you've observed about your wife over the past several weeks. So I told them everything. The coffee, the habits, the memories, the photos. I expected them to think I was crazied out instead. The man nodded grimly. Mr. Brennan, your wife Sarah died 6 weeks ago. There was an accident at this facility, an exposure to an experimental biomaterial. She didn't suffer, but the damage was catastrophic. We couldn't save her. I couldn't breathe. No, she's alive. She's at home right now. That's not your wife. It's a prototype. A biological construct created using your wife's cellular material and DNA. It was supposed to remain in containment, but it escaped. We've been searching for it. A construct? You're saying my wife is some kind of clone? Not a clone. Something more complex. It has your DNA, her memories, or it has access to information about her life. But it's not her. It's a blank slate wearing her face, learning to be human by mimicking the people around it. I felt sick. Why didn't you tell me she died? The project is classified. We would have approached you eventually, but the construct's escape complicated matters. Mr. Brennan, we need you to help us. That thing in your home, it's dangerous. We don't fully understand what it's capable of. It seems harmless, just incomplete, for now. But it's learning, adapting, and its cellular structure is unstable. In a few weeks, it might start to degrade, or it might become something else entirely, something we can't predict. I thought about the woman in my apartment, the one who looked like Sarah but wasn't, who tried to act like Sarah but got the small things wrong. What do you want me to do? Lead it out of your building. Get it to a secondary location where we can retrieve it safely. We'll provide you with a new identity if necessary, help you relocate. But we need to contain it before it becomes a threat. I should have agreed immediately. But all I could think was that the real Sarah was dead, and this construct was all I had left of her. Even if it wasn't really her, even if it was just a copy, a failed experiment. I need time to think, I heard myself say. The man's expression hardened. Mr. Brennan, this isn't optional. Then arrest me. But I'm not helping you until I've had time to process that my wife is dead. They let me go, probably because they needed my cooperation. But they were watching now. I could feel it. I went home. The woman who looked like Sarah was making dinner. She smiled when she saw me, and for a moment, she looked exactly. Story 10. Jack's Promise. Childhood horror time loop. Rain becomes softer. Almost like static, my name is Jack. I need to tell you about a promise I made when I was 8 years old, and why I'm terrified of what happens when I turn 43. When I was a kid, I had an imaginary friend named Jack. I know what you're thinking. That's my name too. That's the first weird part. My parents thought it was cute, if a little narcissistic. Jack is playing with Jack, they'd say, laughing. But I didn't name him. He named himself. He appeared one night during a thunderstorm. I'd always been afraid of storms, and this one was particularly bad. Lightning lit up my room like a camera flash, and thunder shook the house. I was hiding under my blankets, crying, when I heard a voice. Don't be scared. I'm here now. I peeked out. There was a boy sitting at the foot of my bed. He looked exactly like me, same hair, same pajamas, same everything. But he was smiling, completely unafraid of the storm. Who are you? I whispered. I'm Jack. I'm going to be your friend. I'll protect you from the scary stuff. And he did. Whenever I was afraid, Jack would appear. He'd talk to me, distract me, make me laugh. He was the perfect friend, always available, always understanding, always there when I needed him. My parents were supportive at first. Imaginary friends were normal, they said. Lots of kids had them. I'd grow out of it, but I didn't grow out of it. Jack was still around when I turned 9, then 10. And that's when my parents started to worry. When they tried to tell me Jack wasn't real, I'd get upset. He is real. He's sitting right there. Why can't you see him? They took me to a child psychologist. Dr. Reeves was a kind woman who specialized in childhood development. She talked to me about Jack, asked me to describe him, asked what we did together. He's exactly like me, I told her. He says we're the same person, just from different times. Dr. Reeves's expression changed slightly. Different times? What does that mean? He says he's from later, from when I'm grown up. He came back to help me because he remembers being scared when he was my age. And you believe that? I shrugged. Jack says when I'm his age, I'll understand. He says I'll remember. Dr. Reeves recommended the imaginary friend wasn't harmful and that I'd likely outgrow it naturally. But she pulled my parents aside. I heard them talking through her office door and said something that stuck with me. Some children with imaginary friends are actually experiencing something more complex. Dissociation, or in rare cases, precognitive awareness. Keep monitoring the situation. Jack stayed with me through elementary school. He was there for every hard moment, when I got bullied, when my dog died, when I broke my arm falling off my bike. He'd appear, looking exactly as he always did, exactly like me at 8 years old. And he'd make it better. The day before my 11th birthday, Jack told me he wouldn't be able to visit much longer. Why not? I asked, devastated. He was my best friend, the only one who really understood me. Because you're getting older. The connection is getting weaker. But don't worry, we'll see each other again. When? When you're my age. When it's your turn. My turn for what? He smiled, but it was sad. To keep the promise. To go back and be the friend you needed. That's how this works. I don't understand. You will. On your 43rd birthday, you'll understand everything. And you'll make the same choice I did. What choice? Whether to save yourself or let yourself suffer. The next day, on my 11th birthday, Jack disappeared. I never saw him again. Life went on. I grew up, made real friends, got through school. I remembered Jack fondly, the way you remember childhood things with nostalgia, but also with the understanding that it wasn't real. Just my imagination, coping with fear and loneliness. I went to college, got a degree in engineering, landed a good job. I got married to Sarah when I was 29. We had 2 kids. Life was normal, good, everything you're supposed to want. But I never forgot what Jack had said. About being the same person from different times. About a promise. About being 40-3 on my 42nd birthday. I started having dreams. In them, I was 8 years old again, hiding under blankets during a thunderstorm. And I was watching myself from the perspective of someone sitting at the foot of the bed. The dreams got more frequent, more vivid. By the time I turned 43 last month, I was having them every night. Then, on the morning of my 43rd birthday, I woke up and I knew how to do it. How to go back. The knowledge was just there, implanted in my mind, like remembering something I'd always known, but had forgotten. It's not time travel, exactly. It's more like projection, sending your consciousness back along your own timeline to a point where you are most afraid, most vulnerable. You can appear to your younger self, interact with them, be visible only to them, but there's a cost. Every hour you spend with your past self, you lose a day of your future. The time has to come from somewhere. Jack, the version of me that came back, must have spent hundreds of hours with me over those 3 years, which means he gave up hundreds of days of his own life. Years, probably. For me. And now it's my turn to decide. Do I go back? Do I appear to that terrified 8-year-old hiding from a storm, give him comfort, give him a friend? Do I sacrifice years of my future years I could spend with my wife, with my children, to ease the suffering of my past? Or do I break the cycle? Let my younger self face those fears alone, the way maybe he should have? I've been agonizing over this decision for 3 weeks now. Sarah doesn't understand why I've been so distant, so distracted. I can't explain it to her. How do you tell someone you're considering giving up years of your life to help a version of yourself that doesn't technically exist anymore? But here's what terrifies me. What if I don't have a choice? What if the timeline is fixed? What if I have to go back because I already did? If I don't appear to my 8-year-old self, then he wouldn't have had Jack as a friend. But I remember Jack. He was real. Which means I must go back, Dot. It's a paradox, and it's driving me insane. Last night, I had a dream that was different from the others. In it, I was 8 years old, but Jack wasn't there. The storm raged outside. I was alone, crying, terrified. And I saw my adult self sitting at the foot of the bed, watching, doing nothing. Why won't you help me? The child version of me asked. Because I'm choosing my future over your past. Adult me replied, and child me said something that woke me up in a cold sweat. Then you're not me anymore. You broke the promise. And now neither of us exists. I don't know what that means. I don't know if it was just a nightmare or a warning. Dot. My 43rd birthday was 3 weeks ago. According to my calculations, based on the timeline and what Jack told me, I have until next week to make the decision. After that, the window closes. The connection weakens too much. If I go back, I lose years. I might not see my children graduate, might not grow old with Sarah, might not meet my grandchildren. If I don't go back, I break the loop. But what happens to causality? What happens to my memories of Jack? What happens to the person I became because Jack was there to help me? Do I cease to exist? Do I create a new timeline? Does it matter? I've been sitting at my computer for hours, writing this, trying to make sense of it. My wife thinks I'm working late. My kids are asleep. The house is quiet, and I can feel it. The pull, the knowledge of how to do it is growing stronger, more insistent. Like an itch I can't scratch. My 8-year-old self is back there, right now, in all moments at once, waiting. Maybe knowing I'm supposed to come. Maybe feeling abandoned because I haven't yet. I think I've made my decision. I'm going back. Not because I have to, but because I can't abandon myself. That scared little boy deserves to know he'll be okay. That he'll grow up strong enough to make this choice, even if it costs me everything. If you're reading this, it means I succeeded. I've left this document timed to post online 1 week from today. If I'm still here, I'll delete it. If not, then you'll know. You'll know that Jack was real. That I was Jack. That I gave up my future to save my past. I hope my family understands. I hope they forgive me. I hope the time I lose isn't time with them. But even if it is, I can't make a different choice. Because if I do, I'm not the person who was strong enough to write this. I'm not the person Jack helped me become. The storm is starting. I can hear thunder in the distance. It's time. I'm going to keep the promise. I'm going to save myself. Document posted, October 17th, 2023. Author note: Jack Morrison was reported missing on October 18th, 2023. He was last seen leaving his home late at night. His car was found parked near Lake Murray, but no body was ever recovered. His wife reported that he had been acting strangely for weeks, talking about fixing something from childhood. This document was found on his computer, set to autopost. If anyone has information about Jack's whereabouts, please contact authorities.